funniest thing about life is that we live it. The odds of a person being born are 1 in 400 trillion, but the odds of them dying are always 100. To be given the gift of life only for it to be whisked away from you. Look at the world around you, the chairs you're seated on or the screen you stare at as you watch this video. 10 raised to 78. That's 10 with 78 zeros, and that's the number of possible combinations that atoms can go through. So for you and me to be seated here today, surrounded by all that there is chance. We're lucky enough to be given this gift we call life, but the beauty of it is in its fleetingness. One moment, we are fully aware. Our mind's active, our heart's pumping blood, and then in the next instant, we are gone. Our consciousness disappears and we cease to exist. This impermanence of life is both frightening and a reminder to cherish every moment. Ideas like life after death, rebirth, or souls are comforting theories designed to make us feel better about the reality of death, that once we're gone, we're truly gone. Science offers explanations for these ideas, such as neural activity, confabulations, or even hallucinations. Yet, the mind struggles to accept the idea of total disappearance. How can we go from being fully alive, thinking, feeling, and existing, to absolute nothingness? It's a paradox, much like the Big Bang Theory. How can everything come from nothing, and how can everything eventually return to it? Throughout our short-lived life, our humanity craves for 3 main things: safety, belonging, and mattering. Here's the thing. Humans are meaning-making machines. We're constantly searching for a purpose or a feeling. Odd to think that everything the human mind and body craves so much is only what others can supply. Our humanity focuses so entirely on creating and nurturing relationships with one another because that is the basic human tendency. That was how our ancestors survived through getting hunted down by timber wolves. People are our purpose in life. They're what keep us from succumbing our minds to loneliness. Love is our strongest tendency, be it in friendship, be it in familial ties, be it even in hatred. But then, there's death. Death separates us from everything we've ever known, whether realistically or metaphorically. Whether it is someone who is erased from existence or someone who is no longer in our lives, you're still here, surviving, and they're not. How is that fair? What are we supposed to do when our heart craves for something or someone it can no longer have? How are we supposed to survive when we've grown to draw parallels, when I've grown so used to your touch, but I'm here and you're not? The sound of your laugh, your gentle voice, or your gentle embrace, things that I'll never again experience, things that I've grown so used to, things that are now ripped away from me. When I was 5, I had a stuffed toy named Lucy, a little brown dog that reminded me a lot of my real one. I adored her because she brought back memories of my mischievous dog stealing bananas from right out of my hands. Not that I minded. I hated bananas. One night, after calling my sister a burnt toad, she tore Lucy apart to shreds. I was devastated. It was the first time I felt the hollow ache of grief. Over the years, that ache consistently grew larger, through lost belongings, falling outs with friends, and moves to new places. Grief carved out a larger space in my heart, whispering, "You'll learn to live with me." They say it's a neuroendocrine stress reaction, particularly the activation of the hypothalamic pituitary-adrenal axis, leading to the release of corticotropin-releasing hormones, vasopressin, adrenocorticotropic hormones, and glucocorticoids. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give, but cannot, for whatever reason. All that unspent love gathers up in the corner of our eyes, the lump in our throat, and in that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. And once it consumes you, fully and utterly, and turns love into a hollowed out hole, then comes the 5 stages of grief. Denial. Me running to my room after my sister came to me laughing, bragging about her latest shenanigan. The idea that my cherished toy, my lifelong companion, was now just fluff and fabric seemed unreal. But when I saw the shreds, reality hit. I couldn't believe that Lucy was truly gone forever. And then came anger, the closest person I could blame. My sister was first up in line, of course. She really got an earful from 5-year-old Manya. I hit and screamed and cried before finally getting tired enough. Then I blamed my parents. Why didn't you stop her? Anger at myself for leaving Lucy out, knowing that I had a rapscallion sister on the loose, and anger at God for letting this happen. Wasn't he supposed to control fate? Then the what ifs. Bargaining. What if I just left Lucy in my cupboard that night? My sister wouldn't have even gotten to her there. I'd do anything to turn back time and get Lucy back again. I'd trade every single other stuffed toy I had for her. Why couldn't it have been them instead? Maybe if I hadn't called my sister a burnt toad on that fateful night, then none of this would have happened. Would it? Depression. Realizing she was truly gone. I'd have to continue on without a little sleeping buddy I could tuck in. The sudden strike of sadness, the tears rolling down my cheeks as I realized she was never coming back. And then, finally, acceptance. She was gone, and it was all right. She wasn't the first, nor the last stuffed toy I'd ever have. It was okay. I remembered her with a smile on my face rather than a bitter expression. I embraced her memory, and I understood why it was the way that it was. People, of course, are alike in all ways and yet so entirely different. You can spend your entire life growing up in the same house as someone you've learned life from, only for you to have to remember them for longer than you've known them. There's no replacement for a loved one, after all. There's no one who quite compares to what you've lost. No one you share the same bond or the same connection with. No one who laughs the same way or cracks the same jokes or has that twitch in their voice, quite the way similar to how they used to do it. It hits harder. It hits tenfold. Oh, they're really gone. For good. Our brains are so hardwired to nurture relationships, and when someone important dies, it struggles to understand that death is permanent. The idea of mortality. Our brains latch onto and immerse themselves into bonds, and then we're expected to make do without them. Grief is the inevitable cost of love. Nothing good comes without a price, of course. The imminent impact those we love have on our lives is scary, and when they're gone, bam. Of course, no one knew what to say to a grieving 9-year-old who had just lost her father. No one knew how to wipe up the tears spilled from adolescent eyes. The biggest peeve I had were people constantly telling me that they were sorry for my loss, that my father was in a better place. I didn't care. I wanted him there with me. I wanted my father back. It's okay. Be strong. It wasn't okay. It was never going to be okay. Someone I'd grown from was gone, and no one knew what to say to a grieving 9-year-old. Grief felt unreal. It felt fatal. Being sorry for my loss didn't replace my father. Grief is a funny thing, because it wasn't the loss that hit me the hardest, it was the guilt. The guilt of the first smile on my face after my world had been turned upside down. The guilt of the first sliver of a laugh that escaped my mouth, and the guilt of the first moment of genuine happiness. It was the guilt of achievements I'd made without him, knowing that he'd never get to see his daughter grow into a woman. It was the guilt of having to look life in the eyes and tell it you'd move forward. It was the guilt of having to embrace the hole in your heart as a part of it. It was the guilt of moving on without someone you loved so indelibly. The guilt was most funnily worse than the grief. Hand in hand, they dominate the mind. They let you believe that you can't live life to the fullest if they're not here. Let me tell you a little secret to life. All of us are 100% going to die. Everyone you love. Grief is inevitable. It's a journey all of us are going to have to take somewhere down the line. It feels fatal, but it's eventually surpassed. Time is the biggest enemy to life, but also the biggest advantage. Somewhere along the line, you begin to look for them in yourselves. People are so far engraved in our existence because they've shaped us to be who we are today. It's from them that we've learned everything we've ever known from. It's from them that we find our comfort in the scary journey we call life. My heart and everything I do is so full of them that I can barely call it my own. The truth is, everyone we've ever loved remains a part of us, etched into our being. I see my father in the way I joke, or in the way I wear my Crocs in sports mode, just like how he did, even though I've always hated it that way. I see him in the way my mother tells me I look just like him over tea on a Saturday morning. A childhood friend lives on in me in the way my eyes light up when I smile, and another in the way I tie my shoelaces, just as how she taught me. My grandfather lingers in the way I scratch my arm when I'm nervous. Their presence is woven into every inch of who I am. I find peace in knowing that though they're gone, they're never just memories. They're always present. People who grieve, we don't get to move on. We move forward, knowing that some wounds are never meant to heal. Thank you.